bilateral relations between South Africa and Botswana will be strengthened today. International Relations and Cooperation Minister Naledi will host her Botswana counterpart, Minister Lemogang Kwape, for the Binational Commission in Pretoria. The two nations will look at ways to strengthen trade and boost other areas of cooperation. International reporter Khayelihle Khumalo joins us now. A very good morning, Kaya. Thank you so much for making the time. Obviously, the big issue is the charges now leveled against former President Ian Khama, who's currently exiled in South Africa.
Well, that's right, Desiree. So there's going to be really the elephant in the room as the two ministers will be meeting, especially because we know that currently the former President Ian Khama of Botswana is presently exiled here in South Africa, and he had cited quite a number of concerns around his security in Botswana. But of course, in terms of the amended charge sheets, really, it's quite a string of serious charges relating to the illegal possession of firearms, among others, and some of the accused as well that have been implicated alongside him include, of course, the former intelligence boss of Botswana and also the former police head as well. So that's really going to be quite a very main issue. But apart from that, we do know that Botswana and South Africa really do need each other. You look at Botswana itself, where it's positioned, it is a landlocked country, so it certainly does rely on South Africa in terms of the movement of good, in terms of the issues of trade as well. But it's been really interesting to observe how Pretoria and Gaborone have been acting. You look at the very current topical global issue. At some point at the United Nations General Assembly, Botswana voted alongside those countries who denounced Russia and saying its presence in Ukraine really violated international law, whereas Pretoria really chose a path of saying, look, they're going to be neutral in this position. So these are some of the issues that the two ministers will be looking at in terms of the regional issues and, of course, the international matters as well. But also when you look at the commonalities, you look at the presence of the two countries as part of SAMIM, the SADC mission in Mozambique. So that's why you do see that the two countries do care about stability in the region. But apart from that, when you look at the SADC Troika, you do have South Africa as the current chair of the organ for politics, security and defense, and of course Botswana is the outgoing chair of that particular organ. So quite a lot of plethora of issues that the two ministers will be looking at.
Of course, Kaya, the ministerial engagement will be followed by that meeting by the heads of state, President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Masisi. What are we expecting there?
Well, absolutely, and it's going to be a very unprecedented session because when you go back to the historical context, the last time the two heads of states from the two countries met through this diplomatic platform, that was when the former President Zuma and of course former President Khama were meeting. So this is going to be a very important occasion when President Ramaphosa will be meeting with President Masisi. So quite a number of issues that they'll be looking at. We know that when it comes to issues like trade, issues pertaining to immigration, science and technology, water, and many other string of critical issues really will be explored. But also really just in terms of making sure that they resuscitate the bilateral relations, because we do know for some time Gaborone and Pretoria, they have been at loggerheads in so many fronts. So this is going to present an opportunity for the heads of state to look at ways of really trying to rediscover the commonalities between the two countries.
And Kaya, of course, the issues that are contentious. We spoke at the beginning about those charges against the former president. Just give us a sense as you interact with the people that are organizing these meetings. What sort of sense do you get? Will this hamper the conversations or is this a non-issue?
Well, quite a number of South African diplomats are really cautiously optimistic about this session. They're looking forward to this engagement to try and fortify the relations between these two countries, because really they do depend on each other in so many fronts. You look at the presence of South African entities in Botswana, but also just in terms of boosting other areas of cooperation. We know that when it comes to tourism, Botswana is quite a very important player in the Southern African region, but also South Africa by its own right as well is quite a very important player in this particular sector. So quite a lot of them, as much as the issue of former President Khama really is in everybody's tongue and everybody's looking forward to this particular issue, but during the course of the morning we'll really try and get maybe perhaps an understanding from the two ministers, whether will they perhaps look at the issue of the extradition of former President Khama, because these are very serious charges that he's facing, and we know that for numerous occasions when former President Khama has been engaging with SABC News, he has always downplayed really these charges, blaming his successor, the current president of Botswana, in fact going as far as saying it's a witch hunt against him. But also we saw at some particular instance where his brother, at some point the brother of the former president, was incarcerated and subsequently he was released, and really just blaming the abuse to the current administration of President Masisi. And this is a very long-standing issue. At some point, Desiree, we saw former Minister of International Relations, Lindiwe Sisulu. She had to go to Gaborone really to try and thaw these very frosted relations. So it's a new chapter today to look at how can these two countries work together to make sure that they understand the bigger picture in terms of making sure that they fortify these relations, because they're based on a number of historical events. You go back to the apartheid raids where some South Africans died in Botswana, and Botswana was quite a very important country as a transit point for the freedom fighters running away from the apartheid South Africa. So now two countries are free, and Botswana has always been hailed as a stable democracy. So certainly they really want to make sure that they maintain that particular status, especially in this region.
Dr. Naledi Pandor will be giving the opening address any moment now. Are we carrying that live?
Well, by all means, Desiree, so it should be happening any point from now onwards. You can see really behind me the two flags have really just been put together to make sure that everything is fit and proper for a bi-national commission for the two countries to be able to make sure that they make room for businesses to thrive between the two countries. And we know that with COVID-19, both economies really just took a knock. So that's likely to be one of the main issues as to how can Gaborone and South Africa work together in terms of reviving their economies, in terms of making sure that they work together, also hand in hand with the business community, but also looking at other opportunities presented by the likes of the Southern Africa's Custom Union. So it's one of the oldest. South Africa and Botswana are very pivotal players when it comes to this particular instrument, but also you look at issues as well like the continental free trade area. So these are some of the most liberal economies in Southern Africa and just across the continent. So how can they seize opportunities and make sure that they do away with some of the barriers that may inhibit intra-Africa trade?
Kaya, thank you so much for setting the scene for us, and of course we'll be watching to see how those bilateral talks take place.